Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Praptasya kalyana gunanavasya Pande gunanavasya Pande gurashi charana Pande gurashi charanara vrindam Pande gurashi charanara vrindam Charanaravinda Vande Gurashi Charana Mahaprabhu Ki Tana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Gita Vaditra Madhyam Romanchakam pasu taranga baju Vande Gurashi charanara vrindam Baju Vande Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shingaratanma Niramarjanado Nana Nityanana Shingatanma Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyonjatapi Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasadu Satana Triptan Bharivakta Shanga Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasadu Satana Triptan Kridvaiva Tripti Bhajata Shadeva Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Bhajata Sadeva Shirari Kama Bhavayara Para Madhura Leela Gunarupanamna Shirari Kama Bhavayara Para Madhura Leela Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Ne Kunja Yono Rati Kelisidhai Jajali Bhir Jokti Apekshaneya Ne Kunja Yono Rati Kelisidhai Jajali Bhir Jokti Tatrati Daksha Ativala Vasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Ativalabhasya Sajjadharitena Shamastashrashri Ruktastattabha Gataiva Sadhavi Shashri Ruktastattabha Gataiva Sadhavi Kintu Prabhoja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Gora Shri Charanara Vrinda Kintu Prabhoja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Gora Shri Charanara Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Dhyayam Stuvam Tasya Yasatri Sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanaro Bindam Jayam Stuvam Tasya Yasatri Sandhyam Jayam Stuvam Tasya Yasatri Sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanaro Bindam Yasatri Sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanaro Nama O Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityana Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunavadi Pasata Deshata Dine Rama Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunavadi Pasata Deshata Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shivaswadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hariyaraye Namah, Krishna Jadavaye Namah, Jadavaye Madhavaye Kesavaye Namah, Gopal Govindaram Shrimadhusudam, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasara Guna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Shri Shri Radha, Nila Madhava Radha, Nila Madhava Radhe, Radha Nila Madhava, Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra, Jaya Baladeva, Subhadrama, Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman Hanuman, Sitaram, Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Pramanandi, Haribo, Jaya Vishnupada Paramahansa Prabhupada Kanacharya Stutara Shama, Ishikon Pratishta Viviti Samstapakacharya Vaishnava Siromani Guru Priyajam, Krishna Prema Bhaktidat Patita Pavana, Abhocharavina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhari Ki Jai, Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Gunasat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai, Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसारी गौर भक्तवृंद की जय, जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय, जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिनंदन श्रीमन गौरंग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि मावरनाय अवतार की जय, गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरिनाम संकीर्तन जय की जय, जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय, Brihad Nidanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopakupna Radha Kund, Syama Kund Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrajabhim Vrindavan Maturdam Ki Jai, The Lordship Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava Ki Jai, Shri Shri Maya Purnavadip Eka Chakradam Ki Jai, Parama Karuna Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai, Shri Purushottama Kitra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smaspadra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai, भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कर्ण सिंगरी भगवान की जय, गंगा माय जमुना माय की जय, तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय, श्रीमती राधा रानी की जय, समवेत भक्त बिंद की जय, निताय गौरी प्रेमानंद हरि बोल. All glories to the assembly bodies, all glories to the assembly bodies, all glories to the assembly bodies, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru Shri Gaurang Guru.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Praladadadayine.
Praladadadayine.
Hiranyakashipurvaksha.
Hiranyakashikurvaksha.
Shilatangkanakalaye.
Jaya Silatangkanakalaye.
Ito nasimha, bharato nasimha.
Ito Nisimha, Bharato Nisimha.
Yato yato yamitato nasimha.
Jaya Jato Jato Jamitato Nisimha.
Vahe nasimha, vijaye nasimha.
Vahe Nisimha, Vijaye Nisimha.
Narasimhamadin saranam prapade.
Narasimhamadin Sharanam Prapade.
Tavakara kamala pare naam adbhuta singham adita hiranyakasipu tanubringa keshavadita narahari rupa jaya jagadisha hare Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare
Abhakara Kamala Bhare Nakam Adbhuta Singha Kalita Hiranyakasipu Tanabhinga Kesavadita Narani Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re
Keshavadita Narhari Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare
Kesavadruta Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re
Jaya Narsimhadev, 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 Jaya Narsimhadev,
Jaya Nisimhare Jaya Nisimhare Jaya Nisimhare Jaya Nisimhare
Jaya Pranad Maharaj, Pranad Maharaj, Pranad Maharaj, Jaya Pranad Maharaj,
Jaya Pranad Maharaj Pranad Maharaj Pranad Maharaj Jaya Pranad Maharaj
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada,
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev,
Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev
Singhadev Bhagwan ki Jai,
Jai
Prahlad Maharaj ki Jai,
Jai
Srila Prabhupada ki Gaur Premanande.
Hari 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 Bol. Shri Vrindayai Tulasi Bai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Bai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Vrindaye tulasi devyaye priyaye kesava satya Vishnu bhakti prade devi Shatavataye namo namaha. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki Jai.
Namo Nama Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Nama
Tulasi Krishna Priyasi Namo Namaha.
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Nama
Tulasi Krishna Priyasi Namo Namaha.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Prava Eya Vilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Prava Eya Vilasi.
Shetomara Sharanaloy Daravancha Purnaho
Jito Mara Sharanala
Kripa Kori Korotare Vrindavana Vasi
Kripa Kori Karatare Vrindavana Vasi.
Moraeya Vilas Vilas Kunjediava
Moraeya Vila Vilas Kunjediava
Nayane Heribo Sada Jugala Ruparashi
Aminayane Vivo Sada Jogala Ruparasi.
Eni Vedana Jaro Sakiranu Koro
Eni Vedana Dhara Shakira Yanogata Koro
Sevadi Karadiye Koro Nijadasi
Seva Yadi Karadi Koroni Jadasi.
Dina Krishna Rasekoi Eye Namoraho
Dina Krishna Daseka Eyela Mara
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayana Vasi.
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 Yani Kani Cha Papani.
Janika Nisapapani Brahmatani Kanisa Nanikani Pranasanti Pradati Naparipani. Janika Nisapapani Brahmatani Kanisa Nanikani Pranasanti Pradati Naparipani. Janikani Sapapani Brahmatani Kanisa Nanikani Pranasanti
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tusi Maharani, Jaya Tusi Maharani, Jaya Tusi Maharani, Jaya Tusi Maharani.
Jaya Tusi Maharani, Jaya Tusi Maharani, Tusi Maharani, Jaya Tusi Maharani.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda.
Nitagora Haribo, 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 Nitagora Haribo.
Nitagora Haribo, 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 Nitagora Haribo. Shri Vrindayi Tulasi Devayi Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindayi Tulasi Devayi Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradi Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulasi Devyaye Priyaye Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavataye Namo Namaha. Jeshmati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of his wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower carry the images of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always sing in love Shri Radha and Govind. Shri Mati Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikhastakam Ki Jai. Chaito Dapanamajanam Baba Mahadava Shri Akari Chandika Vitaranam Vidya Vadhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Kadipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Paramparavideti Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Namakari Baudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pita Niyamita Smrane Nakala Jisitava Kripa Durdhai Bamidrisham Ya Jananara Janavada Pisinjena Dorora Pisa Ishrana Amanina Manadena Kitanya Sada Hari Dhanam Najanam Nasundari Kavitam Vaja Gadishaka Maye Mama Janmane Janmanishari Bhavata Bhakti Ravai Ainandatan Jakinkaram Paditama Visame Baba Budau Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Stitaduli Sadrisham Vichintra Nanam Galora Strudharaya Vadanam Gadagadharudaya Gira Pulakai Nishitamba Pukada Tavanama Grahane Bhavishati Jugaitam Nimeshe Jakusha Prabhupada Shunyatam Jagatasam Govinda Vedayam Asrishva Madaratam Vinashtam Patarashnavam Mahatam Parotva Yadatavam Koto Matranatastu Saivana Para Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikastakam Ki Jai Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratisha Namaha. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart with the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fiery condition of life with the period birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully test the nectar for which all is anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested your transcendental energies. They are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself Lord and stroll in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharajananda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, some or other, I've fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at the yellow of the speed. Oh my Lord, when will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up and will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? Oh Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering one moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain. I'm feeling old, vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so, even if sunders me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he's always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. Blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the names of demigods, the Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literatures or literatures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which often Vedas as fruitive activity, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting with the holy name and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. कृपा सिंधु विवच परितनं पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय। श्री गुरु प्रणाम मंगलचरण की जय। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं
Shirupam Sagrajatam Sagana Punitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Krishna Sambandha Vigyana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujvala Premadya Shri Rupanugavaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostite Namo Nurvani Simurtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudava Harine Namo Gaura Kishoraya Shashadvaraya Murtaye Vipalambara Sambhode Padamba Jayate Namaha Namo Raya Sachitanadanamine Guru Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Guru Vir Baba Bhumestwam Yudesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Savabhuma Sri Jagannathayate Namaha Skalpaturabhyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Namaha Nam Storm Kam Krishnam Bhakta Swarupakam Bhakta Bhaktaram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jayatam Surator Pangur Mama Manda Matir Gati Matsarvasva Padambujo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Brindaranya Kalpadramadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastato Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastali Vihi Sevyamano Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasaram Vivam Sivata Tatastita Karsan Venus Vaner Gopir Gopinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiragdir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakarasatma Sakalpa Vriksha Laksha Vritesa Surabhira Bipaliantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambhrama Sevyamanam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kwananda Ararinda Dalayataksam Barhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandar Pakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvanamalya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranai Kalavilasam Shaman Jibanga Lalita Nita Prakasam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Anga Yasya Sakalendri Rittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadi Mananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purisham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sudurlabha Madurlabha Matma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastukoti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayo Ratapi Manaso Manipungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichitra Tatve Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chaitam Jagadanda Kotim Yaschaktirasta Jagadanda Chayadanta Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Baba Bhavita Dio Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Suktaya Meva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasapati Bhavita Bhistabhirya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalabi Golok Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhutto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Deva Hidesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatistan Nana Avatar Makarod Bhuvanesu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhuvat Paramam Pumam Yo Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagananda Koti Kotis Vasesu Vasadadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahmaniskalam Anantam Asesa Bhutam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Mayahi Yasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Jai Gunya Tad Visaya Veda Vitaya Manam Sattva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasa Ya Praninam Pativalam Smaratam Upetya Lilaya Tena Bhuvanani Jaya Yajasram Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Golokanamni Nijidamni Tale Chitasya Devi Maheswari Dharma Sate Sudesha Tete Prabhavini Jaya Vichasayena Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shristi Stati Pralaya Sadhava Saktireka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vivarti Durga Ichana Rupam Abhyasya Chichestate Sa Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Naitata Pritagasetu Yasambutam Samapaitikari at Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Departure Devita Santana Mabhyapetya Dipayate Vivite Samanu Dharma Yastadrikeva Vishnu Tayavibhati Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narna Vajale Bhajatisma Yoga Nidramanant Jagadanda Saroma Kupa Dhara Sakti Mavalambya Paramsramurtim Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisprasit Kala Matavalamya Vyavanti Loma Villaja Jagannatha Vishnu Mahansa Yasya Kalabhisesa Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basman Yatasma Sakalesa Nijesa Teja Sriyam Tiyat Prakataya Tapitat Vatatra Pramaya Esa Jagadanda Vidanu Karta Gama Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palavi Yugam Vinidayakam Badwande Pranamasama Esa Ganadi Raja Vignan Vihanta Malamasi Jagatrayasya Govinda Madi Vanti Visanti Yamcha Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sakala Grahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Teja Sweet Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Dharmo Tapapa Nichayastapam Si Brahma Dikita Patagava Dehastajiva Yadata Matari Pava Brakadapava Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Yastrinda Gopa Matavinda Mahoswakarma Bandana Rupa Valabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nidhati Kintu Chabakti Bhajam Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Yam Kroda Kamasa Japanadibiti Vatsalya Moha Gurugora Vasavya Bhava Sanchintya Tasya Satrasim Taramapurete Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Skriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpatur Tumabhumishchintamani Ganama Itoyam Amritam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriyasaki Chidanandam Jyoti Paramapitada Swadyam Apicha Sayatra Shiradi Bhisravati Shrab Yabas Jasumahan Nimesa Dakyuva Rajitina Hiatra Pisamaya Bajay Swita Divam Tamaham Iagolakam Itiyam Vidantaste Santakshiti Virachara Katipaye Prabhupada Shri Guru Vastika Prayerski Jai. Spiritual Master receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it, so the Spiritual Master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisance to the Lotus Feet, as such Spiritual Master is an ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing, playing musical instruments, the Spiritual Master is always glad by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet as such Spiritual Master. Spiritual Master is always engaged in temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet as such Spiritual Master. Spiritual Master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the Spiritual Master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet as such Spiritual Master. Spiritual Master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastime of Radhika and Madhava and the qualities, names, and forms. The Spiritual Master aspires to relish this at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet as such Spiritual Master. Spiritual Master is very dear because he's expert in assisting gopis who at different times made different tastes for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. I offer my most humble obeisance unto the Lotus Feet as such Spiritual Master. Spiritual Master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all and four authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet as such Spiritual Master, who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the Spiritual Master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the Spiritual Master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the Spiritual Master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet of my Spiritual Master, His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3, Text number 3. Samahuta Bhismaka Kanyayaye Shriya Savarnena Bubhusayai Sam Gandharvaritya Misatam Swabhagam Jagre Padamudani Dadat Suparna. Samahutaha invited Bhismaka of King Bhismaka, Kanyaya by the daughter, yea, all those, Shia, fortune, Savarnena by a similar sequence, Bubhushaya, expecting to be so, Asam of them, Gandharva in marrying, Ritya by such a custom, Misatam carrying so, Swabhagam own share, Jagre took away, Padam feet, Murdini on the head, Dadat placed, Suparna Garuda. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Attracted by the beauty and fortune of Rukmini, the daughter of King Bhismaka, many great princes and kings assembled to marry her. But Lord Krishna, stepping over the other hopeful candidates, carried her away as his own share, as Garuda carried away nectar. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Princess Rukmini, the daughter of King Bhismaka, was actually as attractive as fortune itself because she was as valuable as gold, both in color and in value. Since the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, is the property of the Supreme Lord, Rukmini was actually meant for Lord Krishna. But Sisupala was selected as her bridegroom by Rukmini's elder brother. Although King Bhismaka wanted his daughter to be married to Krishna, Rukmini invited Krishna to take her away from the clutches of Sisupala. So, when the bridegroom, Sisupala, came there with his party with the desire to marry Rukmini, Krishna all of a sudden swept her from the scene, stepping over the heads of all the princes there, just as Garuda carried away nectar from the hands of the demons. This incident will be clearly explained in the 10th canto. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Attracted by the beauty and fortune of Rukmini, the daughter of King Bhismaka, many great princes and kings assembled to marry her. But Lord Krishna, stepping over the other hopeful candidates, carried her away as his own share, as Garuda carried away nectar. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. So this history of Krishna and Rukmini is very important to understand because it clearly shows how some people, even if they see God, they don't understand God. And this is true for Rukmi and Sisupala and Jarasandha and many others, as well as it was even in the time of Jesus Christ. Although he's not God, but he is the Son of God. But still, very few people recognized who he was. Hardly 12, 14, maybe 15 people recognized him as the Son of God. So, seeing is not always believing. But if you hear about God, then you can understand. If you hear from bona fide devotees, not by nonsense people. So, we're going to read something about this transcendental pastime. It says, in the chapter about Ranachura, in the Krishna book, it says, the story of Krishna's marriage with Rukmini is described as follows. The king of Vidarbha, Maharaja Bhismaka, was very qualified and devoted. He had 5 sons and only 1 daughter. The first son was known as Rukmi, the second is Rukmarata, the third Rukmabahu, and the fourth Rukmakesha, and the fifth Rukmamali. The brothers had 1 young sister, Rukmini. She was beautiful and chaste and was meant to be married to Lord Krishna. Many saintly persons and sages like Narada Muni used to visit the palace of King Bhismaka. Naturally, Rukmini had a chance to talk with them, and in this way she obtained information about Krishna. She was informed about the 6 opulences of Krishna, and simply by hearing about him, she desired to surrender herself to his lotus feet and become his wife. See, this is the value of hearing from bona fide devotees, not from nonsense people. Rukmini had never seen Krishna, but she heard about him from Narada Muni and other bona fide devotees, and she developed this desire to become his wife. So, hearing is much more important than reading. Hearing is much more important than physical contact. Hearing is the most important thing, and that's why the first principle of the 9 types of devotional service is Shravanam, and the second principle is Kirtanam, repeating what you have heard exactly the way you heard it. And then hearing what? It should be about Lord Vishnu or Krishna. And then what happens? So, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. You can remember. The problem is you read, but you don't remember much. But when you hear from bona fide devotees and repeat what they said, and what's the best way of repeating? It's going on Harinam Sankirtan and preaching to people, and offering them books, and then answering their questions and their challenges. Then you learn the philosophy. You hear in the morning, you go in the Sankirtan in the afternoon, you come back in the evening and ask questions. If there were some questions asked to you that you were not able to answer, very quickly you learn the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. But if you don't come on Sankirtan, you might remember some things, but not very clearly. And you might learn some things, but it's not really substantial because you haven't gone through the process of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. Smaranam means remembering. And in other words, it becomes part of your consciousness. Krishna, of course, he heard once and remembered everything he heard the rest of his life. And there are other people like that. But to do that, you must never lose any sperm, and you must be very, very renounced in life, not living a complicated life with a lot of possessions and having a lot of different mundane duties where you're in contact with materialistic people. However, if we simply do what Prabhupada asks us to do, and that is to hear, to come early in the morning, wake up early, take a bath, put on clean clothes, come to the Arti ceremony, Tulsi Puja, and then after that, recite some mantras, and then hear the class. Then you become fixed up. And then go out on Sankirtan. Well, that's the icing on the cake, as they say in English. So, Sankirtan is important if you want to understand the philosophy, because you're seeing so many people on Sankirtan who don't understand the philosophy, and they're suffering, and they're in anxiety, and they're always in trouble. And you can see that. You know, you go out on the street, you'll see homeless people living in tents, and then you see other people that seem to be successful in life. But the closer you come to them, you see that they have a lot of problems also. Just like Elon Musk, from a distance, it looks like, oh, he's on top of the world. He's the richest man in the world. But then you look at what's happening to him. He's in a lot of anxiety. Why? Because people in his position want to be the supreme controller, but they're up against tremendous amount of competition, and the competition is vicious and nasty, and it causes anxiety. Okay, so here it says, naturally, Rukmini had a chance to talk with them, that is, the saintly persons that visited her father, because her father was a pious man, and he was a devotee also. So people like Narada Muni would regularly visit the kingdom. Narada Muni goes all over the universe, but he also comes to the earth, at least he used to in previous times, because there were saintly kings, saintly persons. So naturally, Rukmini had a chance to talk with them, and in this way she obtained information about Krishna. She was informed about the 6 opulences of Krishna, and simply by hearing about him, she desired to surrender herself to his lotus feet and become his wife. Krishna had also heard of Rukmini. She was the reservoir of all transcendental qualities: intelligence, auspicious physical features, liberal mindedness, exquisite beauty, and righteous behavior. So when it says liberal mindedness, what does that mean? They use that word today, liberal. But in this case, when it refers to Rukmini being very liberal, that is, she's open to being instructed by bona fide devotees. That means she's very liberal. And she understands from those devotees not only the science of Krishna, beginning with the six opulences of Krishna that he possesses in completeness, but also how Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. Therefore, all living entities, even the demons, have a relationship with Krishna, whether they realize it or not. But the devotee realizes it. And that is the most significant thing. And therefore, a devotee treats all people with respect, even the demons. And the devotee does not make friends and enemies, because the devotee knows that Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. Therefore, he is respectful to all living entities. He or she is respectful to all living entities. So this is all by hearing. It's not necessarily by studying or reading. It's by hearing. So Rukmini, she was the reservoir of all transcendental qualities: intelligence, auspicious physical features, liberal-mindedness, exquisite beauty, and righteous behavior. Krishna therefore decided that she was fit to be his wife. All of the relatives of King Bhismika decided that Rukmini should be given in marriage to Krishna. But her elder brother, Rukmi, despite the desire of the others, arranged for her marriage with Sisupala, a determined enemy of Krishna. Even her father, King Bhismika, wanted her to be married to Krishna. But the elder brother became inimical to Krishna because he associated with people like Sisupala. So, tell me who your friends are, I will tell you who you are. So if you associate regularly with materialists and demons, then that tells a lot about who you are or who we are. So, Asat Sangha Tyaga, E Vaishnava Pracha. So you want to know who is a devotee? That this phrase that Lord Chaitanya spoke explains it. The devotee avoids the association of asat, people who are not engaged in understanding Krishna, who are engaged in asat, which means mundane activities all the time, materialistic activities. Just like some people call this so-called guru Sat Guru, but actually his name is Asat Guru. That's his correct name, Asat Guru, because he has nothing to do with the Vedic Shruti. He makes things up, and he says, why are you interested in reading these ancient scriptures when I am here in the flesh? Just listen to what I say. Okay? So this is the trick of all the false gurus. They downplay the importance of Shastra, although sometimes they might quote some things, but they downplay the importance of Shastra in the life of the devotee, and they magnify themselves, their personality, their presence, as if that's much more important than these old books. So they deprecate the importance of the Shastras and amplify their personal importance. But what are they going to speak? They're going to just give opinions. Yeah? Just like you go to a doctor, and after 6 weeks of analysis, blood tests, this thing, that thing, then you go to hear what his conclusions are. And he says, well, it may be this, and it may be that. And there's a possibility, maybe something else also. Well, wait a minute. Why would you go to such a person who's just giving you a lot of maybes? You went to him to find out what's wrong, right, with your health. So that's not acceptable. Opinion is not acceptable. Facts are acceptable. Facts that are true. So that is the definition of science. people have the wrong definition of science. You look it up in a dictionary; it's the wrong definition. It doesn't really explain what science is. Real science is truth that is true in the past, the present, and the future, and in all frames of reference. That is science. That's the real definition of science. It's something that was true in the past, it's true in the present, and it's true in the future. It's predictable, it's consistent, it's orderly, and it is true in all times and in all places. That is real science, and therefore the only real science is the science of Krishna, because only he comes up to that threshold of being true in the past, present, and future, and in all references. It can be in the spiritual world, it can be in the material world, in all places. So, to understand real definitions of words, you have to read Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and Prabhupada's purports, because he defines the real definitions of all these words. The same words are used by Mayavadis. Like, for example, the Mayavadis also talk about Krishna. They also talk about what is the truth. They also talk about what is real, what is false. Like, for example, they think that the entire material world is false. They say, and they come up with a phrase that is that Brahman is true and Jagat is false, right? The material world is false, only Brahman is true. But Vaishnavas say that because the Brahman is truth, everything that emanates from Brahman is also the truth, like the material world. However, the material world, although it's the apara prakriti, the inferior energy, spiritual energy of Krishna, it's still spiritual, which means it's still eternal. But it goes through two phases. Sometimes it's manifest, sometimes it's not manifest. Even when it's not manifest, it's still existing because it's eternal. Whereas the spiritual energy is always manifest and is always eternal in the past, in the present, and the future. So therefore, the Mayavadis' theory that only Brahman is true, Brahma Satyam, Jagat Mithya, but the Jagat is false. That's why they're called Mayavadis, because they're worshiping something that's false. It's not true. And they give their own definitions to words. But if you read carefully Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, he gives the correct definitions of these words that are being misinterpreted by others. So just like if you look up in the dictionary, Krishna is defined as a Hindu god. There's nothing Hindu about Krishna. He's the god of everyone, not just the Hindus. So that definition is a false definition, right? So we go to the dictionary to find out the definitions of words, but many of those words are falsely defined in the dictionaries, even the Britannica and the Merriam-Webster and so forth. So in order to, and another thing is they define yoga as a Hindu practice. It's nothing Hindu about yoga, right? But again, these are all false definitions. So here it says that Rukmini is the reservoir of all transcendental qualities: intelligence, auspicious physical features, liberal-mindedness, which we explained, exquisite beauty, and righteous behavior. Krishna therefore decided that she was fit to be his wife. All of the relatives of King Bhismaka decided that Rukmini should be given in marriage to Krishna, but her elder brother Rukmi, despite the desire of the others, arranged for her marriage with Sisupala, a determined enemy of Krishna. Now the question is, if King Bhismaka, the father of Rukmi, wants her to marry Krishna, how come he is deferring to his son, who wants her to be married to Sisupala because of attachment? You see, in the same way, Dhritarashtra was informed at the birth of his son Duryodhana that he should send that boy away. He should not keep him as his son, because he would be the cause of the destruction of his whole dynasty. But because of material attachment, he didn't do it. And what the pundits told him was true. And later on, he caused the destruction of the entire of all of Dhritarashtra's sons. And so we see how attachment to bodily attachment to relatives can be one's undoing in life. We have to be attached to Krishna, not to relatives. Relatives, we give respect, but we don't give them authority over us. We have to rely on shastric evidence. So there's the triangle of verification. We should all learn this triangle of verification. Triangle has 3 points. First point is Krishna and his words, Bhagavad Gita, and words spoken about him, Srimad Bhagavatam. And second point are the acharyas, who simply repeat the words of Krishna. They don't extrapolate. That means adding something on to it, or or taking something away from it. And then the third point is the guru, who validates the statements of the acharyas and of Krishna. Validating meaning he just simply repeats also. So in the case of Bali Maharaj, Bali was actually a saintly person, but he was the king of the demons. And during his time, the demons, he was king of the whole universe at that time. So sometimes the devas are defeated and the demons become prominent in the whole universe. So at that time, Bali had a guru. His guru was Sukracharya. Sukracharya, what does that mean? He's the acharya of Sukra, of semen, because he has material attachments. So you cannot say that he's actually a guru, although he did teach Bali Maharaj that Yagyavai Vishnu, that Vishnu or God is the recipient of all sacrifices. So Bali Maharaj was instructed by his guru to give in dan to brahmanas. So what happens? A dwarf brahmana appears, and he is actually Krishna as a midget. And Sukracharya immediately recognizes who he is. This is an incarnation of the Lord. And he tells Bali Maharaj, don't give him a damn penny. So this is a red flag for Bali Maharaj, because he can't close the triangle of verification. He was taught what the triangle of verification is by his guru, but now his guru is violating what he taught. So Bali Maharaj tells his guru, I cannot accept your instruction. He said, what? You're going against your own guru? This is the worst aparad you can perform. And in one sense, it's true. You should never oppose your guru or deny an instruction from guru. But if the guru gives you an instruction that's not bona fide, and you cannot close the triangle of verification, then you have to follow Bali Maharaj's example. He refused to follow his guru because his guru deviated from the acharyas and from the original words of Krishna. So a guru is someone who repeats Krishna's words and lives according to them. Not only he repeats them, like in the case of Bali Maharaj, he repeated, but he didn't live according to it. So he basically proved that he was not bona fide. So then Bali Maharaj curses. And then Sukracharya curses his devotee. He says, I curse you to lose everything you have. But Bali Maharaj accepts that as a blessing. He said, yeah, if I lose everything to Krishna, but that's the purpose of life, isn't it? Everything belongs to him anyway. So he was not upset with his guru's curse. Actually, it was a blessing. So this is the difference. Like, for example, let's say you're married and you have a big argument with your wife, and your wife insults your parents, right? So what do? You want to kill your wife? You want to argue incessantly with her? No. See, whenever a devotee is insulted, he takes it as a blessing. Why? Because if you think in your mind, whenever anyone insults me, I'm going to chant more rounds that day. So that person becomes your guru, you see. They're inspiring you to chant more rounds. It depends on, how you see. The word for philosophy in Sanskrit is not philosophy. Philosophy is a Greek word. Philos means love, and osophy means wisdom. So it means love of wisdom. But that's not the word in Sanskrit. In Sanskrit, the word for philosophy is darshan, which means how you see. So a mother sees her child with eyes of love and protection. But a child molester sees the same child with the eyes of dominance and sexual exploitation. So therefore you understand clearly that the word darshan is a much more significant word than philosophy, because it's how you see things. So if you have a vow in your heart that if anyone insults me, that day I'm going to chant 5 more rounds. So your own wife insults you, or you insult your wife who's a devotee, so that person becomes your guru. They're inspiring you to chant more Hare Krishna. So we have to see things properly. All material knowledge teaches us to see things improperly. Therefore, following that type of knowledge, we always get into trouble. So, like for example, you have the Ukrainians and the Russians, and they're killing each other, although they're the same people. They're both Slavic people. They both speak Slavic languages. In fact, most people in Ukraine and most people in Russia are, well, not most, but oftentimes they speak each other's language. They can understand it. It's just like French and Spanish, or French and Italian. Both languages are Romance languages. They originally come from Greek and also from Vedas or Sanskrit. So they share many words. They pronounce them a little bit differently, but they're the same, mostly the same words. So if you know French, you can easily learn Spanish. You could easily learn Italian. You could also easily learn the language of, the other Romance languages. Okay, English would be harder because English is a motley language. It's made up a lot of Greek and Latin, but then again, there's a lot of Germanic words and a lot of French words and a lot of this words and that words. It's all polyglot type of language. But the other Romance languages, you can go from one to the other without much difficulty. And the same thing, I'm sure, is in India with different languages, because a lot of them are based on Sanskrit. So we see that we must learn language and meanings of words from Prabhupada's purports, which is based on the words of the Acharyas and ultimately the words of Krishna. Otherwise, we'll end up with the wrong definitions of words, and that's misleading, and we'll make many mistakes because of it. So here it says, when the black-eyed, beautiful Rukmini heard of the settlement that was that she was going to marry Rukmi, she was going to marry Sisupala, who's the friend of Rukmi, she immediately became very morose. However, being a king's daughter, she understood political diplomacy. Whoa, it's a big word, political diplomacy. Okay, we're going to explain that in a minute. And decided that there was no use in simply being morose. That's a very big philosophical point. When people become morose, they become, anxious and upset and very sad, and they think there's no hope for them in the world, they immediately shut off their intelligence and become confused. So the difference between someone who's enlightened with Krishna consciousness knowledge and a person who isn't is the Krishna consciousness, the one who's Krishna conscious always sees the silver lining in the most difficult situations. Silver lining means something positive. Like, for example, Parikshit Maharaj, when he was cursed to die, he saw something positive. He said, oh, now I can prepare. And now I know I'm going to die in 7 days. None of us know when we're going to die. We could die in 7 minutes, right? We don't know. But he knew exactly when he was going to die. So that was actually a silver lining. So then he immediately decided, I'm going to give up everything that keeps me in touch with the material nature. And now I'm going to completely focus my mind on Krishna. But what's the best way to focus your mind on Krishna? Chant Hare Krishna and hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So yesterday we talked about how Bhagavad Saptaha is nonsense. Yeah, why is it nonsense? Because you would have to do what Parikshit Maharaj did. He gave up eating and sleeping and any materialistic maintenance of his body and just listened and asked significant questions. That's the way you learn. You don't learn by challenging a speaker. You learn by asking significant questions. Tatvidi paripratena paripasnena sevaya padekshami te jnanam jnaninas tatpradarshanaha. Krishna explains how to approach the guru. You approach the guru with submissiveness, asking significant questions, and offering service. That creates the proper atmosphere for questions and answers. All the Vedic scriptures, almost all of them, are questions and answers. The Padma Puranas, questions by Parvati to Lord Shiva, who gives the answers. Bhagavad Gita is questions by Arjuna to Krishna, and he gets the answers. Srimad Bhagavatam is questions by Parikshit Maharaj to Sukadeva Goswami, and questions asked to Sutta Goswami, and so forth. So all throughout the Vedic literature, there's questions and answers. So oftentimes when we say at the end of the class, are there any questions? And there's deep silence. That means that the people were not actually listening, because there should always be some kind of question. So when I lecture on Sunday night, I tell the people, no questions, no eat. You want to eat, but somebody has to ask a question. So therefore, somebody raises their hands. That's the question. Because they're all anxious to eat, right? So if they want to eat, they have to ask a question. But it's very, very good to ask questions. And there's always going to be something a little bit controversial or something that one might not understand. So therefore, you ask a question. But they're submissive questions. They're not challenging. Like, well, what do you think? That, think Krishna is God? I mean, how do you know he's God? Right. No, that's not a question. That's a challenge. But, you were explaining the 6 qualities of Krishna. Could you explain them a little bit more? Okay, that's a question. That's a submissive question. So, all this etiquette, spiritual etiquette, is very important, because the whole spiritual life is based on respect, learning to respect parents. If you respect your parents, then you'll easily be able to respect elders. You'll easily be able to respect religious people. And you'll easily be able to respect all people. But if you don't have respect for your parents, it's going to be very hard to respect elders. It's going to be very hard or impossible to respect spiritual people. And it's going to be very impossible to respect all people. So we see this respect, this, what's the Hindi word? Saman? Is that the word for respect? Huh? Saman. Yes, Saman. Saman is the culture. Say, we learn to respect the ant. Someone said, well, Prabhupada, how do you preach to the ant? And Prabhupada said, you get 1 grain of sugar that's been offered to the deities, and you put it near the ant, and you go, Hare Krishna. That's the way you respect the ant. right? So, I mean, the devotee respects everybody, including the ants, including, everyone, all living entities. So, how do they do that? Well, Lord Chaitanya, when he was walking through the forest of Jharkhand, he was chanting Hare Krishna. What happened? The animals started chanting Hare Krishna. Of course, we don't have that power. Don't try it. But Lord Chaitanya had that power. So the tigers and the deer no longer were enemies. They were chanting Hare Krishna together. See? So this is the vision of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and the Acharyas. In fact, Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote that wonderful bhajan. Narada Muni, and so forth, that beautiful bhajan, where he explains how Lord Brahma is chanting ecstatically Hare Krishna, and Lord Shiva is chanting ecstatically, and everybody, all the demigods, everyone in the universe is chanting Hare Krishna ecstatically. So this is the dream of all Vaishnavas, to get everyone to chant Hare Krishna. And you can do it. You can do it. Like yesterday on Sankirtan, of course you didn't come. What happened? Oh, that bath only lasts for about 10 minutes. Oh, he took a bath outside. That's not an excuse. That's not an excuse. You said you were going to come. Anyway, Sankirtan was very ecstatic yesterday. We had about, let's say, 40 people, 40 devotees. And who else was there? Was anybody else there yesterday? Oh, yeah. What would you say about Sankirtan yesterday? Huh? We did. We distributed a lot of books yesterday. We distributed a lot of prasadam yesterday. Yeah, this one girl was yesterday was graduation day at the University of Washington, and she was dressed in a beautiful sari, and she came to talk to the devotees, and she said, "I'm graduating now. I got a job in Silicon Valley, but I want to give you $100 because I was eating for many times at your food truck, and if it wasn't for the food truck, I would have been in trouble. And I want to just show how much I appreciate what you're doing." She gave $100, and the devotees insisted that she take a whole stack of books. So she took the stack of Prabhupada's books, and that's what happens when you give out prasadam. You make a lot of friends, right? And it's not to make money; it's to make friends. Because if you make friends and people appreciate what you're doing, eventually they will become devotees. Because there's appreciation. That's the definition of Shraddha, the first point of the 9 points of how to attain spiritual perfection. You have to appreciate the activities of the devotees. So she ate for maybe 2-3 years at our food truck, and now she's graduating, and she wanted to express her appreciation. So there's a lot of instructive things that happen on Sankirtan. You can't really learn the philosophy of Krishna consciousness unless you come out regularly on Sankirtan, because you're going to be challenged by people. You don't know what the challenges are going to be. And you're going to see things that convince you that you're doing the right thing, going out on Sankirtan on a regular basis. That's how the movement started. When I joined, the only thing we did was go on Sankirtan. And we used to go sometimes 16 hours a day. Not sometimes, most of the time, 16 hours a day. We wouldn't even come back to the temple to have prasadam. We'd have the prasadam brought to us on the streets. And we'd be in the streets or in the subways eating prasadam, and people would come by in the subway and they look at it. So what's going on here? There's like 10, 15 people eating, sitting down in the subway platform eating. We didn't even want to go back. Prasadam came to us in the field. So Sankirtan is the way to learn the philosophy. You hear the class in the morning, you go out on Sankirtan, and you'll be challenged. People ask you all kinds of questions, or they challenge you, uh, and then you come back and you hear the class at night, and you ask questions. You say, "Well, this guy asked me this question. I didn't know the answer. Can you tell me what the answer to that question is?" That's how you learn, through practical experience of preaching. In the beginning, you don't know much, but because you're challenged and because you're attending class morning and evening, you asked questions of things you didn't know, and now you begin to learn. See, this is the process. If you never come on Sankirtan, you will have a very hazy understanding of philosophy, and you won't be able to convince anyone to become Krishna conscious. I guarantee you. You won't be able to convince anybody. You only learn how to convince people when you go on Sankirtan and you're challenged and you're not able to answer questions, and you come back and you ask those questions to whoever's giving the class, and they give you the answer. Now, how do you answer a question? You don't say, "Well, I think it means that." No, that's not the way you answer a question. You say, "Okay, this question was asked previously in the Bhagavad Gita by Arjuna, or in the Srimad Bhagavatam by Maharaj Pariksit, and here's the reference to it, and here's the answer." That's the way you answer a question. You don't say, "I think," because "I think" means I stink. There's no such thing as "I think." Either you know or you don't know. If you don't know, you say, "I don't know, but I'll look it up and I'll come back tomorrow or the next day and give you the answer." Right? So this is the culture of Krishna consciousness. There's no "I thinks," there's no maybes, there's no "what if," or "let's assume that." There's none of that nonsense. Either you know or you don't know. And if you don't know, that's okay. You just say, "I don't know right now. I'll look it up and I'll come back with the answer." Right? Okay, so then in this way, so Rukmini is distressed, and therefore, let's see, where was I? Yeah. So King Bismika was experienced in dealing with Brahmanas. Okay, so so it says King Bismika was not enthusiastic about handing his daughter over to Sisupala, but he was obliged to accept the marriage settlement due to his affectionate attachment to his eldest son, who had negotiated it. So you see how it's very easy, because of material attachments, to know the right thing but do the wrong thing. It's very easy because of material attachment. So here's King Bismika. He knows what the right thing is. He's convinced of it. He still does the wrong thing because he's attached to his son. That's how dangerous material attachment is. Now, we should never be, let's say, abusive to our relatives, even our son or daughter or wife or husband, but we should understand what is the truth and what is not the truth. And that's why there's the triangle of verification. So if someone tells you something that violates Krishna's words and the words of the acharyas, and you cannot close the triangle of verification, then no matter who it is telling you, it could be parents, it could be grandparents, it can be scientists, it can be philosophers, whatever. You have to take a position that you're going to remain faithful to Shastric evidence and to words of Krishna. So we cannot become emotional. So, "Oh, it's my dad and he said this," and or "it's my son and I don't want to discourage him. I'll do the wrong thing." No, you cannot do the wrong thing. Otherwise, you become you'll participate. You'll get 1/6 of the karmic reaction of the wrong person that you're following. Just like in the 6th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, beginning, there's a story about a guru who was not a guru. He was a kangaroo and not a real guru. And he ordered his disciples to construct a concrete boat. and they constructed a concrete boat. And when they put it into the water, and they all got in the boat and went into the water, it sank, and they all died, and they all went to Yamaraj, and the followers of the gurus, hey, what's going on here? How come we're seeing Yamaraj, and not Krishna? And Yamaraj said, because you're following your guru. So, but wait a minute, that's what we're supposed to do, isn't it? No, because he's not a bona fide guru. He was not teaching you properly. But wait a minute, we were sincere. Yeah, I know you were sincere, but you chose the wrong person. That means that you were not sincere. Therefore, you're staying here. You see. So if you follow the wrong person, even though you're sincere, you go to hell. So be careful who you follow, who you choose to follow. Say, there's no excuse. That story is there, right in the Bhagavatam. There's no excuse. If you are attracted to a cheater, that means you are a cheater. But you're being cheated by a bigger cheater than you. But if you learn by hearing genuine devotees speaking Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, you will not be cheated. Okay, so it says that as a matter of duty, the king was decorating the city for the marriage ceremony and acting in great earnestness to make it very successful. Water was sprinkled all over the streets, and the city was cleansed very nicely. Since India is situated in the tropical zone, the atmosphere is always dry. Dust always accumulates on the streets and roads, so they must be sprinkled with water at least once a day. Whoa. You see this in Calcutta. They turn on the hydrants in downtown city or in parts of the city. People take baths in that water, but it also washes the streets a little bit. And in big cities like Calcutta, look at it, there it is, twice a day. So Prabhupada is saying that twice a day they're washing the streets. The roads of Kundina were arrayed with colored flags and festoons, and gates were constructed at particular crossings. The whole city was decorated very nicely. The beauty of the city was enhanced by the inhabitants, both men and women, who were dressed in fresh washed cloths and decorated with sandalwood pulp, pearl necklaces, and flower garlands. Incense burned everywhere, and the fragrances like aguru scented the air. Priests and brahmanas were sumptuously fed and, according to ritualistic ceremony, were given sufficient wealth and cows in charity. So this is what this is called sagat by the Muslims. Muslims, they say there are 5 things you have to do in your lifetime. One of them is going to Makkah, and another one is performing zakat or charity at least once a year, right? And it has to be profuse. As this sort of softens up any resentments that evolved during the year between poor people and rich people. In other words, the rich people have to be lavishly charitable at least once a year in Islam. But here we see that it was a regular thing in the Vedic tradition for the king to be lavishly charitable for all the people in his kingdom, right? But how did he distribute the wealth? He distributed it by giving it to the genuine brahmanas. Now, does that mean the genuine brahmanas become really fat and they have gold necklaces and they drive around in BMWs and they have lavish marriages for their daughter? No, because to be a brahmana, you have to take a vow of poverty. Even though in Vedic times, they were lavished with wealth. They were given all this wealth from the kings, but they would distribute it to the people because they knew the people. They lived with the people. They educated their kids for free, and they lived a very minimalist life. The life of a devotee should be minimalist. Even though you might gain $1 million a day, you should spend it before the end of the day to spread Krishna consciousness. Because how many rotis can you eat? you only need 1 or 2 rotis, right? But if you eat 10 at a time, you just get a stomach ache, right? So being a minimalist is the key to being a preacher. Someone, just like you look at the Goswamis, they all were very rich people, but they gave it all up and lived like paupers in a sense. They would sleep under a different tree. Even after they built their temples, they didn't sleep in the temples. They continued to sleep under trees in Vrindavan. And everybody loved them. Even the bad people, the dacoits and the gundas, they also loved them because they were genuine people. They were not interested in accumulating material wealth, although they had tremendous material wealth, but they distributed it all. And just like when Sanatana Goswami first met Lord Chaitanya, he had one thing left of his tremendous wealth. It was a very opulent chadar. And although Lord Chaitanya was very happy to see him, he was not pleased to see that opulent chadar. And Sanatana Goswami realized it, and he went to take a bath in the Ganges. Lord Chaitanya asked him to take a bath, and he saw a very poor person who had a torn chadar, and he said, "Sir, will you accept my chadar?" He said, "Really? It's such a nice chadar." I said, "Yes, please accept it. I want your chadar." So my chadar is all torn. He said, No, I want yours. You take this one." And he took that, he washed it, and he started wearing it. And next time he saw Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very pleased. So this vow of poverty is very important for people who want to be brahmanas. I mean, real brahmanas, not the phony brahmanas that you have today. That way, even though brahmanas receive a lot of wealth, they distribute it. And they know who to distribute it to because they're living with the people. And they distribute it to the people that really need the material help, right? Okay, so therefore it continues. It says, priests and brahmanas were sumptuously fed, and according to ritualistic ceremony, were given sufficient wealth and cows and charity. In this way, they were engaged in chanting Vedic hymns. The brahmanas and the brahmacharis, they have to be supported by the grihastas because they should only be engaged in spiritual activities. They should not be engaged in any type of business or any type of for-profit activity because they have a vow of poverty. They cannot learn if they're engaged in for-profit activity. In fact, let me read something Prabhupada says. It's very important. He says human civilizations he talks about civilizations, should depend on the production of material nature without artificially attempting economic development to turn the world into a chaos of artificial greed and power only for the purpose of artificial luxuries and sense gratification. This is but the life of dogs and hogs. Whoa. These are Prabhupada's words, right? What does he say? That's in a letter that he, no, that's from Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 17th chapter, 3rd verse. Right? And in another place he says, and this is very interesting, he says, yes, he's talking to a husband and wife. He says, yes, to call one another Prabhu is all right. He's saying, the husband, you can call your wife Prabhu. And the wife said, you can call your husband Prabhu. But not to become Prabhu. To accept others as Prabhu and remain a servant is the idea. But because somebody is calling you Prabhu, one should not become a Prabhu and treat others as servants. In other words, everyone should feel himself a servant and not to think himself Prabhu because he is being called Prabhu. Whoa, this is very interesting. And another place, it says, our society requires millions of dollars for propaganda work. But Krishna has made us financially poor. I think it is good to remain financially poor because always we shall be able to pray to Krishna, asking his help to execute his service. If all of a sudden we become very strong financially, Maya may dictate to us for sense enjoyment, and we may fall a prey to her tactics. Therefore, to remain poor is one of the qualifications for advancing in Krishna consciousness. Whoa. Did you ever hear this before? You ever hear this before? That's why you should come to class. These are Prabhupada's words, where he wrote this to a letter to Himavati in Montreal, 14th of June, 1968. He says, therefore, to remain poor is one of the qualifications for advancing in Krishna consciousness. Our predecessors, the Goswamis, they voluntarily gave up everything for advancement in Krishna consciousness. We do not require any money for our personal account. We shall always be happy with anything. Krishna is happy to supply us for maintenance, but for the preaching purposes, we can accommodate to receive all the riches of the world. So let us try with sincerity, and Krishna will help us in the matter of our advancing the cause of Krishna consciousness. So basically he's saying, look, don't try and build up a big bank account, and when you die, you have $4 billion in the bank. That's a mark of shame. That's not a mark of success. That's a mark of shame. You died with $4 billion in the bank. You say, all that money should have been used to further Krishna consciousness. There's this one lady, she inherited this big hotel chain. Her husband was in charge of it. I forget the name of it. And when she died, she had $4 billion in the bank, right? And she bequeathed it all to her dog. So basically, it means she's going to be ripped off. So she, had this lawyer, and he was the executor of her estate, right? So what did the lawyer do? He bought the most expensive, what do you call it, plot in the most expensive cemetery in New York City, and that's very expensive. And he built a $2 million mausoleum for the dog, right? So he paid several $1 million for the plot, and he built a mausoleum. Mausoleum means it looks like a palace, right? And if you go to New York to these very high-end cemeteries, you'll see, they're like whole palaces people build, right? And they bury the bodies of all their relatives in that palace. Right? So this is nonsense, right? That's a mark of shame. It's not a mark of anything good. All that money could have been used to spread Krishna consciousness. So anyway, we shall always be happy with anything. Krishna is happy to supply us for maintenance, but for the preaching purposes, we can accommodate to receive all the riches of the world. So when I joined Krishna consciousness, I had to give everything I had. In fact, I was what you would call shaken down by Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He virtually turned me upside down and went like this. And any money I had in my pocket fell on the ground, right? And I didn't like that, but I had no choice at that time. And then he gave me my service. I had to wake up 3:30 in the morning, and we were in Berry Place Temple, and it was an up-down temple. It was a very thin building, and and there was no elevator. You had to walk up stairs to go to sleep. You had to walk downstairs to the temple room, and then farther down for prasadam. So I had to go all the way from the top floor all the way down to the bottom, and sweep the prasadam room 3:30 in the morning. And that was like unbelievable to me. 'Cause I never woke up before 3:30 in the morning, right? So anyway, but from that day on until today, I've never been in any difficulty for my basic needs. Even when we tried to start a temple in Paris, we were sleeping under a bridge at that time. We were homeless, right? But quickly, I was able to convince some person who was coming to our programs to let us live in his apartment. It was a small apartment, but it became our first temple. So I was never in any need for maintenance, and that's what he's saying here. He says, "We do not require any money for our personal account. We shall always be happy, and anything Krishna is happy to supply us for maintenance. But for the preaching purposes, we can accommodate to receive all the riches of the world." So, and in the Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers, Prabhupada is answering questions from Bob Cohen or Brahmatirtha Prabhu. And he asked him something about money, and Prabhupada said, yes, on the goodwill of Krishna consciousness, our devotees are receiving many donations. But if you use 1 penny for your sense gratification, you'll go to hell. 1 penny. They didn't say, $10 or $100. Said 1 penny, you'll go to hell, right? So this is real knowledge. And when you are completely dependent on Krishna, Krishna is the richest person in the whole universe. He's not a poor man, and he's not going to let you starve, and he's not going to let you be miserable because of your sincerity, right? So we see that all the time when you go out on Sankirtan. So he says, so let us try sincerely, and Krishna will help us in the matter of our advancing the cause of Krishna consciousness. In other words, he's saying, Krishna will give us everything we need to expand the movement as long as you remain sincere and follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness and be a preacher. Take a risk, just like I took a risk. I've been taking risks all the time. I'm not afraid of taking risks. As long as my desires are pure, Krishna will help. If I have mixed desires or if I have bad desires, I'll be a failure. But if I have pure desires to please Krishna, in some mysterious way, Krishna will help. We have to have that determination. Okay, and that's how the movement started. Prabhupada told 3 couples in, I think in Montreal, he said, I'm sending you to London, open a temple there. They didn't have any money, right? They just had enough money to get to London. But they went to London, and their purpose was to meet George Harrison, which that was at the height of the Beatles' fame. They didn't know George Harrison, but they said, if we can meet him, he could maybe help us. If we can meet the Beatles, it wasn't George, we can meet the Beatles, they may be able to help us. Well, they did meet the Beatles, and George Harrison helped them and helped Prabhupada. See, and if you read in the Prabhupada Lilamrita how that will happen, you'll see it's a miracle how it happened. But it happened because first they thought about it, second they depended completely on Krishna, and third they went out on Sankirtan, and it happened. So that's the secret to success. Remain a minimalist. Always have pure desires to please Krishna. Now, why is that important? Because in previous ages, if you thought of something evil, immediately you would get the result, the karmic result, even without performing the act. But in Kali Yuga, if you think something evil, you don't get the karmic reaction for thinking. You have to actually do it to get the reaction. And in previous ages, if you thought about doing something good, something wonderful for Krishna, you had to actually do it to get the positive result. But in Kali Yuga, simply by thinking of doing something for Krishna, you get the karmic benefit right away. You don't even have to do it. You just think of doing it. So even though Kali Yuga is a very bad time to be in this world, and it's not very propitious for making spiritual advancement, there are many perks. There are many advantages. The third advantage is simply by chanting Hare Krishna sincerely, you can go back to Godhead in this age. Whereas in previous ages, like in the Satya Yuga, you had to meditate. I mean, Vishwamrita Muni meditated 60,000 years in order to change from being a Kshatriya to a Brahmana. But you don't have 60,000 years of meditation in Kali Yuga. You can't even live 60 years in Kali Yuga. But simply by chanting Hare Krishna, you can go back to Godhead sincerely, right? Chanting Hare Krishna. So there are many advantages in Kali Yuga. And if you take advantage of those advantages, then you'll see easily you'll go back to Godhead in this age. Haribol. So we will stop right there. We'll continue this tomorrow because there's a lot of information here. I keep deviating because every little point here has an explanation that is significant for our spiritual life. So are there any questions? Yes. You're next.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So, Maharaj, this the trifecta for verification that you mentioned.
Triangle of verification. Is that what
Yes.
you're talking about? Yeah.
Yes. So, like what I've heard is that even for scriptures, to understand what scriptures really say, one need the access to scriptures is also through Guru. And I've heard about like having absolute faith.
Through gurus, Shiksha and Diksha gurus. It's not simply through Guru. That's a mistake. It's through gurus, Shiksha and Diksha. Someone said, oh, I don't listen to what anybody else says. I only listen to what my guru says. That's a person who's on a slippery slope to fall down. Go ahead.
So isn't it that even the Shiksha gurus are through that Diksha guru, he says, listen to this person, or this is the person I'm authorized from which you can hear.
Yes.
So ultimately there is one person within who says, this is what the scriptures are saying. This is the person whom you can take guidance from, and so on.
Yes.
Okay. So and also that one should have that kind of absolute faith in the guru, that whatever he says, even if there is a contradiction.
No, absolute faith has to be validated by the triangle of verification. It's not that you're blind faith. There's no such thing as blind faith in Krishna consciousness.
So this triangle of verification is what I'm struggling with, because if the access to scriptures is through Guru, and if we see a contradiction between what scripture is saying and what Guru is saying, we don't know, because our understanding of the scriptures, because scriptures.
How do you know there's going to be a disconnect between what the Guru says and what the scripture says? He would not be a guru then. That was the problem with Sukracharya. Although he taught Bali Maharaj correctly, when Vamanadev appeared, he said, don't give him anything. So he violated what he was teaching.
So, like another example I've heard, like even if there's a contradiction in what the Guru says previously and now, like Guru may previously give an instruction, then he may change the instruction. So then,
how do you know that?
How do I know that? I'm saying the Guru may change the instruction.
You're asking hypothetical questions now. Just stick to the shastric points. Don't ask hypothetical questions, because you're going to deviate from what what if the Guru doesn't say the right thing? Well, we already know what happens. You can't follow that instruction, and that's why the history of Bali Maharaj is there. It's an exceptional situation in which the Guru violates his own the shastra. Therefore, you cannot accept that instruction.
So no ifs. The idea is that our access to scriptures is through Guru. Then how can we validate what Guru says through our understanding of scriptures?
Wait a minute. The original Guru is Krishna. It's not this present Guru is the only Guru. The original Guru is Krishna. And anyone who repeats what Krishna says correctly is also Guru. So what do you learn? You learn, when you come to ISKCON, you learn Bhagavad Gita, Ishopanishad, Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So can you learn it falsely? Yeah, if your guru if the person who's teaching you is a false person, he will not teach you correctly. But if you are taught correctly, by genuine devotees, you cannot be fooled.
Yes, so I think it boils down to if you are able to identify a genuine guru, then you're good. But if you end up having placed faith in somebody who's not genuine, um,
Yeah, like
then
Ravi
there is no way.
Shankar, for example.
Yeah. Now, to identify a genuine guru, what I've generally heard is depends on one's sincerity. If one is sincere, if one has cheating mentality, one will be cheated. If one is sincere, he'll be able to identify who's genuine, who's actually representing Krishna or not.
Now, you're going to be able to identify by hearing Bhagavad Gita and going out on Sankirtan and being challenged and coming back and getting your questions answered. And the way to answer a question is they show you right in Bhagavad Gita where the answer is. And not any Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, Yata Rup, as it actually is. That's the same thing that Arjuna heard 5,000 years ago. And because you're hearing the same thing that Arjuna heard 5,000 years ago, you come to the same conclusions as Arjuna. Nasti moha smritir ladva tat prashadat mayukshita stitosmi gata sandeha karishe vachanam tava. Now, Krishna, my moha is over. I don't think I'm this body. I don't think I belong to this particular family or this race or this ethnicity or this country or anything. I belong to you, right? Nasti moha smritir. Now I can remember who I am. I'm your eternal servant. Tat prasada mayuchita. This is your best prasad, Krishna. You have eliminated all my moha. I know who I am now. I'm your eternal servant, right? This is the best prasad. And stitosmi, I'm situated in my right position as your eternal servant. And I have no more doubts. And then Karisya Vachanam Tava, which is the ultimate statement of faith. Whatever you say, Krishna, that's what I'm going to do. So Krishna is the original guru, and whoever repeats what Krishna says correctly, that person is also a guru. Just like Chintamani, she was a prostitute, right? And, her so-called lover comes to see her, and he braves a hurricane and a deluge, right? And he comes exhausted, and she says, if you had even a little bit of determination to, like you have to see me, if you use that determination to serve Krishna, you would go back to Godhead. And it shocked him, right? And she preached to him, and he accepted her as his guru, and he gave up chasing after prostitutes and took up spiritual life seriously. So anyone who repeats something correctly that Krishna has said, you can accept what they say, because it is in line with what Krishna has said. So if something in Christianity is in line with what Krishna has said, we accept it. If something in Islam is in line with what Krishna says, we accept it. So Krishna is the original guru. So you have to learn, what are you learning when you come to class? You're learning what Krishna has said. Okay.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, can I elaborate a little bit of the question which you asked? Sometimes even in ISKCON, somebody gets connected to some devotee in the early days, and that devotee just takes him to go for initiation and prematurely. And he takes initiation in a couple of years or something like that. Then, as years progress, his understanding of Prabhupada's lectures and the Shastra, hearing various devotees, evolves. And then he looks back and thinks that, oh, I made a mistake. I took from somebody from where I'm not able to tap that knowledge and pure knowledge and benefit, because there are a lot of compromises being made and dilution being made. He's not very happy. So at that time, he feels what I should do at that time. So then some of those people I have seen that they take shelter of different Shiksha Gurus, as you said, who are representing the Parampara purely. And then they are able to hook on to that and draw support like that. So his question was that In the early times, neither do we know Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, none of it we know when we come into the movement newly at that time. So we may not, at that time we may not be able to use the Shastra as a tool to check whether Guru is in line with Shastra at that time.
It's not true. That's not true. You're not supposed to take initiation without being absolutely convinced that the person you're choosing has answered all your questions to your satisfaction. That's why Arjuna became submissive to Krishna, because he asked all those questions and Krishna answered every one of them fully and to his complete satisfaction.
2.7, when 2.7 and Arjuna surrenders, and at that time Krishna has not yet answered all the questions, but he had friendship with Krishna, he had firm faith in Krishna, he had devotion to Krishna. So most of the people in ISKCON also, when they come, they take based on some respect for a great personality or friend's recommendation.
Well, that's called Shraddha, that is
Shraddha, yeah.
appreciation. So you cannot, it's not that you've completely surrendered, but you appreciate the knowledge, the activities of devotees. So, but once you enter the temple, that's it. You have to follow what they say. You understand? And if you follow what they say, and if they are sincere, you're going to have class at least once a day, and better twice a day. Now, let's say you don't enter the temple. You're a grihasta. You're working outside, so you come as much as you can, and you begin to learn, right? And it's a slow process. It's much slower than if you entered the temple. But after some years, like here, sometimes it takes people, 5 years to get initiated. But we don't let them get initiated after 1 year or 6 months. Why? Because they're living outside, right? And they can't come on a regular basis. If they live in a temple, then after 1 year or 2 years, they can get initiated. See? So we do not give instant initiation because we want to increase the number of devotees. There are many other movements that do that. The Gaudiya Math people, they do that all the time. They'll initiate someone that doesn't know anything, or very little. So we're not like that. It takes for a grihasta, it would take years to get initiated. And they would have to show that they actually understand. They have to take the what do you call it? You have to take the test, the disciple test, and learn what it means to accept a guru and what is a bona fide guru. You have to learn all those things before you take initiation in ISKCON. We're not giving immediate, because you don't really know who is who when you first come, right? But over a long period of time, you'll figure it out. And the one who answers all your questions correctly and shows you where the answers are in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, it takes time, right? Then you say, now I have confidence that this person is a bona fide guru. Does that answer your question? Yeah. There's no hurry-curry initiation.
Can I ask one question? Maharaj, thank you for clarifying the difference between philosophy and darshan. It was very good.
It's philosophy and darshan. Yeah.
So darshan, does it include philosophy and realization? Is that how we
Darshan
see?
is the word for philosophy in Sanskrit. How you see. So how do you see Krishna? Sisupal saw Krishna as an idiot, as a corrupt person, etc. And the Pandavas saw Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So they're both looking at the same thing.
But one is absolutely correct. But darshan is just not my perception, Maharaj. Is it not?
No, you learn to see correctly by taking part in the classes and asking questions and then going on a Sankirtan and following all the rules and regulations. And it takes time. It's not, instant pancakes. It takes time. And you should take time. You shouldn't jump into initiation. You should never do anything without thoroughly understanding. So Arjuna asked all those questions. Krishna answered all those questions. Arjuna became convinced, I'm going to completely surrender.
So
By the
Arjuna at
10th
that
canto,
point,
by the 10th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, he completely surrenders.
Arjuna had full conviction and realization that Krishna is the Supreme Lord at that time. in
Param
10th chapter.
Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram Paramam Bhavam, Purusham Sasvatam Divyam, Adidevam Ajam Vibhu.
Awesome.
10th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, what is it, verse number
13th,
12.
12?
Yeah.
Sorry, 12, yeah. So there is full conviction. But darshan means I completely accept this. It's not just theoretical idea for me. I fully accept.
No, in the beginning, you look at Krishna and you say, well, maybe he's just a very highly developed man. But when you're convinced that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead and everything emanates from him, he has the six absolute opulences, this thing, that thing, you learn all that science of Krishna, you're completely convinced, then you would become a devotee.
Thank you, Maharaj. Anyone has questions?
See, by the way, there's another point here. Faith always precedes knowledge. Most people think it's the opposite. You have to have knowledge to have faith. No. Faith always precedes knowledge. Like, for example, let's say you want to go to Mumbai. So you go to the ticket office. And when you're buying the ticket, the lady says, sir, don't take that plane. It's going to crash. Would you buy the ticket?
No.
Why?
Because I have no faith.
Exactly right. She ruined your faith. You have faith, but you don't know that the plane is going to land safely. You only know it when you actually reach Mumbai safely. So faith always precedes knowledge. Just like you have, the parents have faith. If I send my kids to this high school, they're going to get an education. But not yet, they're going to get an education. They're going to see about meat eating, illicit sex, gambling, intoxication. That's what they're going to learn, right? And along with that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But the main thing they learn is what we explained yesterday, the material conception of life. That's what they learn. See? So you put your faith in that, and Prabhupada is completely against that. Completely against it. I've written my whole booklet on it. You should read that. Yeah. Okay, you have a question?
Our Shastras also have given, right? But in Nectar of Instruction, we have specifically who can be a guru.
Yes.
So there is reference about how to also assess whether we are hearing everything right from the guru.
Well, no. Guru is someone who's going to repeat correctly the words of the acharyas and ultimately the words of Krishna. That's who guru is. But they also have to live like that. They also have to follow what they preach. So Sukracharya did not follow what he preached. Therefore, Bali Maharaj rejected that instruction. Right. The other thing is, Guru never claims he's God. Right. He doesn't claim that you're God either. Just like Satguru, when he first came to Seattle, he said, Nityananda. Yeah. He said, I'm not here to tell you that I am God. I'm here to tell you that you are God. They're very clever. I mean, each one has their own, way of skewing the truth, So, no, everything has to be based on the Shastric evidence. Now, if you read someone's speculation, like if you read the Bhagavad Gita by Dr. Radha Krishnan, right? No, then you won't. That's not Bhagavad Gita. That's his speculation, right? So you have to read Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. Then you get the correct Bhagavad Gita. It's just like, someone puts a label, nectar, on a bottle of poison, right? So if you think it's nectar and you drink it, you'll die, right? So there are many Bhagavad Gitas. There are at least 600 Bhagavad Gitas since the 16th century. 600 translations of Bhagavad Gita, but not one devotee was made by reading all those other Bhagavad Gitas. Only when Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita came out that people started becoming devotees, sincere devotees, right? So that's why he named it Yata Rupa, as it is. The same thing that Arjuna heard, you're hearing it now in Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada. Okay, we'll stop right there. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for your question. Thank you for the comments also. And are you leaving today?
Yes.
Stay longer. Okay, good. Hare Krishna. This time you come on Sankirtan. You want to say?
So when you're coming to India, you're most
I'm not
welcome.
coming. I'm not coming. Well, after we open a new temple and a few other things, then I'll come.
I want to take your Shiksha more seriously regularly from YouTube. It was so beautiful, enlivening last 2 days for me.
I'm your servant, Prabhu. You are my Prabhu, I'm your Das. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hari Bol, Hari Bol. So let your son lead kirtan. He chants very well. Oh yeah. I wish I could chant like him.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Bando Mui Savadana Mate Jahara Prasade Bai E Baba Toriya Jai Krishna Prapti Hoy Ja Hoy Se Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitite Koriya Kya Arana Koriyo Mane Asha Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते वेद गा जहाँ रचरितो वेद गा जहाँ रचरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनार बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनार बंधु लोकेनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना लोकेनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना हा हा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पादा छाया हा हा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पादा छाया ए बेजाज गौशिक त्रिभुवाना प्रभुपाद पतित पावना जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol. Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol. The lotus feet are spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow to his lotus feet with awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is that my consciousness, purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord birth after birth. From him the ecstatic wind resonates by him it moves in his time. The Vedic expression was character. Our spiritual master is ocean of mercy, and the Lord and master of the devotees, O Lokanath Goswami. O Master, be merciful on me. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the 3 worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet, Srila Prabhupada.